Speaking of reliability, a podcast with good friends talking with you about reliability engineering topics.
Welcome to Speaking of Reliability. This is Kirk Gray.
And this is Fred Schenkberg. Well done, Kirk. Just a little practice and feedback. You're off and running now. You can...
So I say, Fred, after 7 years we've been doing these podcasts, I'm going to get it right.
Well, you've gotten it right in the past, so it's all good. A little bit of practice here now always makes sense.
We definitely had a practice.
That's right. So, we were, just taking a chatting a little bit and took a quick break. And I thought, I was just remembering because I have huge piles of potential firewood if I get it split and stacked and dried and everything else. Yesterday I got a tip. One of the people in the group was like, "Hey, there's some firewood up here if you want it." And it's not a story about firewood at all, except it's related. And I'm driving up there. I stopped at this guy's house, and he comes out and shows me where the wood is. And the house has a big gas-powered generator sitting next to the house. And then I'm driving out. Now I'm kind of looking for it. And it's a neighborhood I hadn't been in before in this area. And it was obvious. There were these big, backup power generators for houses all over the neighborhood. They're pretty obvious in some places. And I've got one in my house. And I remember back and what brings it to mind is that we're coming up on fire season here, and we're seeing more and more notices from all kinds of agencies about fire preparedness and all that good stuff, which makes sense. Right. It's getting more and more real all the time. But one of the things that happens here is that the utility, the electric utility, sets their sensors on their lines to look for down lines or interruptions in the wires, right? Such that it's very sensitive, and it'll shut down a trunk line to cut off power so that it doesn't spark and cause a fire. And
they've gotten sued for that
many times now, apparently. Yes. and so. But then they have to roll teams out to, see if it's a fault, if the line's actually down or not, where did it actually occur? Right. And that sometimes takes them a couple of days because they'll have a 20-mile long line through the woods and they got to walk, they might have a dozen teams out, each walking a mile or two. But it takes some time to get to all this. And they're flying helicopters all over the place looking for these things. Yeah. So that prompted a lot of people to get power backup. And, up here where I'm living and for what I do, my wife and I talked about, well, what kind of generator do we want to do? And she said, I don't want to know that it's working or not working. It just does its own thing. So we had to get one of these systems that senses the power outages, isolates the house from the utility, and supplies power. And it actually worked. The first time the power was out, she was watching some YouTube video and didn't even notice.
Great.
She didn't even, so it worked very well.
That's pretty fast.
But it only takes 20 seconds. And then we have battery backups on the computers and on the routers and you just smaller backups to bridge that gap. Right. But it's expensive, right? I got all these other systems and boxes and stuff. Now, 20 years ago, if I'm on my laptop and we have a power outage, it'll last me a good number of hours. And if worse comes to worse, I drive down to Starbucks and plug it in. Right. But today, people have all kinds of things that go into it. Now, the firewood kind of ties into this because when it's cold and you don't have electricity to do electric heat, or if you have a central furnace like we do, the fan won't go if there's no electricity. So the fireplace was our backup for heat and for cooking for many years until we got so frequent.
Right. And if you have gas heating in the house, it doesn't matter because you still
got to blow it around.
Right. You still got to have a fan.
Yeah.
So,
and it won't keep running unless you're standing down there, with a big, piece of cardboard flapping on it. And keep the air going.
You can't go to the oven, and if you're careful, I mean, stove and light
Well, I
your
have a
gas
gas
burners.
stove. We could light the gas burners, but yeah, you got to pay
Don't
attention.
worry about asphyxiation and gas. Anyway,
Yeah, but
yes, so where would we consider it important to have a redundant system like you do, backup, where you actually have relatively frequent power outages, whereas someplace like here, where I have a power outage once every 18 months, maybe,
yeah.
if we've even had
Well,
that.
that becomes that cost benefit trade off. Are you going to spend
Right.
$1,000 and have have a way to isolate the house and all that other stuff to do
Right.
that? But it's the same set of considerations in a product design. So if I'm designing a communication switching system for
Mm-hmm.
telephones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how that's going to work anymore because landlines, they were regulated that they had to always work. It was just
Yeah.
near impossible for them.
Right.
And they had redundancy on top of redundancy. And I'm thinking of the streaming services.
Mm-hmm.
They got tons of redundancy on their systems, and those big data centers, like for a bank or for like Amazon's store.
Right. Right.
They got redundant power supply sources coming into the
Right.
same building, kind of thing.
Right, because a few minutes of not having access to their site could be millions of dollars a minute or whatever.
Yeah.
Amazon for sure. So Amazon provides storage and cloud services.
And they provide, there's apps and websites and there, all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Right. That they do streaming from, and they rent out to or lease to other companies to store their information.
Well, that's where these podcasts are stored. I don't have enough room on my website where that's hosted to do it. So all the episodes are on an Amazon server, and it's served from there to wherever you're listening to. So a little bit of behind the scenes here for you.
I guarantee every hospital in America has a backup generator system because of the criticality it means, in the middle of surgery or, an oxygen machine. I mean, I dealt with that personally in my life when my father was on a oxygen concentrator. He was in very bad condition at home in bed. And Dallas had a once in 100-year ice storm that knocked out power for 2 days. Fortunately, I was able. Now they would never. Nobody in Dallas would buy a generator based on that event. Okay, because it just was so incredibly rare. But for my father, it was life-threatening, and so fortunately, I was able to stop at a town on my drive from Austin to Dallas and buy the last generator because it's so rare in Texas.
Yep,
and
they were all gone immediately.
Yeah, they were all gone because everybody was having the same. May have had elderly parents that were
or they just wanted to stay warm.
Yeah, exactly. My mother had my father in front of the gas fireplace trying to stay warm, and fortunately we were able to plug it in, and we're able to power heater. I think it's about 2,400 watts in his bedroom, and kept him warm in this oxygen concentrator, which draws air from the outside and concentrates it, the oxygen, and survived for 2 days until Dallas power was able to be restored. So the criticality, like if I'm designing a heart-lung machine, and the FDA probably has all kinds of regulations about that.
Well, it's interesting. Medical's weird, and I have some experience with that. But I think the idea is that the criticality is a factor, right?
Right.
Like on the space shuttle, I remember reading someplace they had 5 navigational computers with different systems, different versions of software, all kinds of different things. Right. And they, because it's kind of important to hit the atmosphere at the right place, at the right angle, and right speed.
Right. And if one of those computers disagreed with the other 5, they would turn that one off. But if 3, it starts to get real shaky.
Yeah, that's right. And there's safety critical things. There's critical functionality. Right. Here at my house, I mean, we've lived without a generator or backup power for years and years and years. But the cost benefit trade off changed when
conditions changed.
Its power was out way more often. It used to be just the winter storm, once or twice a year we'd lose power for a while. But now in the summer, because of the fire protection sensitivity of the lines, it's out longer and more often. And they're getting better at it. Last summer wasn't as bad. Used to be if a squirrel looked at a power line, it would go off. It was so sensitive.
Yeah.
But anyway, but if you're designing a product, I mean, redundancy is not free. You don't get, availability of your system or that it just works. You can do complete redundancy. Give them two systems and make them in active standby, which is really complicated to do and expensive.
Right. It adds elements of potential unreliability and switching and all the other things you have to do. And so, that's another issue that you're not going to get, still not going to get 100%. You get better, but you also make the system more complex.
Yep.
I think what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
And that adds another element of potential unreliability. So, there are all kinds of trade-offs, but any kind of life-dependent system, I mean, we had an outage of the internet, and that's, not life-dependent, but really annoying because we receive everything through our DSL internet. Yeah. We don't get anything over the air except our cell phone, But even that, the cell phones in the house are tied to the Wi-Fi, and there is a Wi-Fi assist if the call is poor.
Yeah.
I don't know how Verizon does it, but they use part of the Wi-Fi to assist in the cell call.
Yep.
I think. Anyway, so it's on an airline or an airplane, they usually have a backup, probably backup power, auxiliary power systems in the plane, critical for its operation, plus battery backup. Now that they're using lithium ion,
insert it out or not catch them on fire.
Well,
we were talking about that.
Now they contain those.
Yeah.
So they don't know how it happened, but at least if it does, the box is not going to release smoke to the in cabin or out the plane.
But the idea of adding, let's say you have a system and the customer's primary need is, I need it to work. Right. So let's say it's a laptop. Well, I'm not putting two motherboards in there. It's right. But you might put, alternate ways to power it. And when you think about a laptop, I can use a battery or I can plug it in. That's redundancy.
Right. You can. And we took out batteries all the time and ran them without a battery in them to test them.
Yeah. But the idea is that it's a cost benefit trade-off. There's an impact to reliability. There's theoretically improvements, but you add another switching box or some other finagle thing on it and sensors on it, there's more points of failure. And you can run down the rabbit hole of, it can get pretty complex pretty quick to get really, really high availability.
And expensive too.
And very expensive. But there are places and times when it's the right thing to do. And as more and more, the electric utilities, we both have experiences with it when, it should just work. It typically just works. But when it goes out, it's not only inconvenient, it can be life-threatening in various circumstances. So as conditions change or as frequency occurs, so many factors influence the decision of when do you put in redundancy. And the hard part is that if you don't consider that early in the design and architecture of your product, it is like any change out of a design. If you're trying to improve reliability or add one more feature, and then usually you've heard it, is the marketing guy comes in and has this fancy presentation and all this data from customers and blah, 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 all these focus groups. Well, if it did this, they would really love it. And it's just a minor change. I don't think marketing folks understand the difference between a minor change and a complete overhaul.
Right.
But redundancy is one that you really need to think that through at the concept phase. It's really hard to add after the fact.
It is, and it's not going to be as reliable if you add it after the fact because you don't have the original team. You didn't intend the design to have that, and that probably instigates a new redesign of the whole thing, I would say. But Yeah, it's for some systems like cell phone systems that we all depend on.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked about how the FCC made sure that when we had
You had a
plain
dial
old
tone. You have a dial
plain
tone.
old what used to be called plain old telephone service,
Yeah.
POTS,
Yeah.
that it was independent. It was powered independently of the electrical system, and that was the need for emergency communications. I mean,
Yep.
that is absolutely. And what happened in 9/11, I think, also illustrated that when their radios, I think their two-way communication system failed a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time, and so that really led to loss of lives and some other things that
Well, there's
and
also
could
different departments that didn't have, that have the ability to talk to each other
right
anyway, unless they're on a cell phone. You
exactly
know?
right. That's where the common call, and people do use a cell phone when they can't reach anything else. So because we have made that system pretty reliable. I've occasionally been out of range of a self station.
Well, when you have a 3 or 4 day power outage, the cell towers
Yes,
have batteries or some have generators, but
yeah.
they run out too. And so,
Have you lost?
oh yeah, we lose cell towers up here when the power's out. It only takes a day or two, and then you lose the towers go out.
But you have a hardwired telephone system, right, in your house?
We do, and it works. If we don't hook up we have a fancy headset that does recording and it's all digital
Yeah,
and stuff.
yeah.
We don't have power. That doesn't work, so we have to plug in the old standard
Handset?
handset that
Oh
Dan
yeah,
kept an
right.
old handset made it work.
Right. Yeah, we had the little radio ones that you plug into the the wall line, and the station would broadcast. Right. So
Yeah,
those don't work.
those don't work when you don't have
So
power.
yeah, you had to get the old rotary dial, or
Well,
the
we
old.
didn't have rotary. We had push button, but it wasn't.
Okay,
It,
the modern stuff.
yeah, I
The modern.
I
Yeah.
don't even think you could hook a rotary up unless it has a translator to get the
Right.
tones over.
I don't think they could do the pulses that.
Yeah. But anyway, it's redundancy is all around us, and there's all kinds of reasons we use it and don't use it. In product design, though, you got to do it by design right up front. And
Right.
some places and organizations get that. That's part and parcel to what they do is in offering a product. The hard part I find is that systems that your customer base becomes more dependent on.
Right.
Cloud storage at the start was not a big deal. It was,
No.
kind of, well, that's cool. What do I do with that?
Right.
Now it's the backbone for many financial systems and transaction systems and website systems and all kinds of integrated all through your business. And so having redundancy and backups and those make sense. I learned early on in messing around with computers that if you put I had 100 contacts in my contact list, and that floppy drive, this is way back, failed.
We date ourselves. Yeah.
And it failed. And but my backup at that point, because I was conscious of that, I needed a backup.
Right.
And one of them was a very tedious process of backing up my disk to another disk. So you'd read it in and it'd write off to another disk. And then finding them and label them and all that stuff. And so, of course, I didn't have one of those that was current.
Right.
And my backup was a printout. And so I typed all the contact info back in and probably got half of it wrong.
Yeah.
And so the other day I was talking to somebody about backups, and I says, for my contact list, I have, a local computer backup.
Yeah.
Right. Under my desk is a separate hard drive, and it's on a Mac, so it's a time machine backup, and it just automatically backs it up, and that works great.
Right.
But then I said, if I'm not home and a tree falls through the house or something else happens and I lose both of those, then I don't. So I started doing a cloud backup service. Right. And then I realized that if I put the file that backup or that contact list, the file that it actually is I put that in like a Dropbox or a Google Drive or something like that. then it's a segment. It's also then backed up. If I lose it locally, it's still on the cloud as an active file. And I think I counted like 15 different places that my contact list is.
Right. And that's what I do with my pictures. I put it on my laptop. I put it on my desktop. I put it on a little portable backup hard drive. And, because I can't imagine, I don't have any way of reproducing those going back in time.
Yeah.
And
we could work on that. And then redundancy backups would be useful, they don't have to worry about it. You can go back, take that picture, and maybe use a better camera.
But now, I used to, since I worked for Dell, and I knew that, in the past, hard drives could fail, and they still do today, but they do at a very, very low rate. And if you look at, it's like a Backblaze and others that
they send out the reports,
they're using them constantly, pounding on them. They still are very, very reliable, and so it's mostly the things that, but I still back up, knowing that also the computer they may go to a new format, like they did with SAS and with the hard drive interfaces, IDE. I think there was all kinds of interfaces. So it's like one of my.
Well, you're not backing up to VCR tape, are you?
Well, that's the thing. Now I got all these little tiny 8mm camcorder tapes, and I put them in my the camcorder itself, and it's supposed to have a digital output. But there's no longer any software to interface with my PC. It's so outdated.
Yep. Oh, I had a VCR tape of one of my aunts interviewed my grandparents. And I thought, this tape's not going to last forever. So I sent it off to a service that had all the equipment and set up. And it wasn't very expensive at all. It took them a couple of days.
Right.
And they digitized it. They had all the tape, ways of all the connections and stuff,
and that's becoming more common. We turn it from a mechanical media, physical media thing, which was DVDs, VHS tapes.
Oh, 8-tracks. Don't forget 8-tracks.
And all that history. And now we're almost exclusively have it as digital files that can be exchanged, shipped, stored, whatever. We don't even use, I look at those red boxes and I go, how can I bet on the decline of red box? Because I don't see people coming to those things anymore and renting their DVDs.
Yep.
In fact, I haven't played a DVD in probably a couple of years. I don't know.
Well, when we lost the internet, and I had the power and internet.
Okay.
And then we have a small box of Diane's favorite movies and a full collection of I think it was, is it Star Wars series or?
Yeah, something.
Something like that.
Star Trek, you never know. One of those.
So I got, you got your favorite ones that you bought back when that was the option to get them. And so the power's out, but we have the whole house generator running, so I can power the TV and the VCR and or not the VCR, the DVD player, and I had some entertainment that night.
Yeah, well, I just wait till the internet comes back, because I don't. There's only a couple movies I can rewatch more than once, but anyway, it's so I guess, obviously redundancy is dependent on the outcome of the resulting failure. Even though we had batteries blow up in some laptops, nobody thought of putting in a second battery.
That's right. That's a good point. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. If the initial failure kind of destroys the whole system, or it's more like it's not really useful to put a second one in there.
If your power supply burned, you ought to put the power supplies far apart from each other, because if one catches, in any kind of powered system, you'd worry about a failure causing a destruction or inciting, further ladder of destruction. That it wouldn't matter. The power supply fails in a certain way. Even though you have a redundant power supply,
it blows up all the regulators inside your system. Yeah. There's so plenty to consider there. And this conversation was just sparked because I noticed all these generators around this neighborhood, and that's a backup. That's a backup generator. That's a backup generator.
And those can fail.
Oh yeah, definitely. They run out
So
of gas too.
how many people your neighbors have a backup to their backup generator?
Well, the guy I visited yesterday had 2 generators there.
Okay.
He did. He had 2 sitting there.
Yeah.
And I know
I would have a big one and a little one.
Yeah, and there was a one of my neighbors here in my neighborhood. They've got a big gas generator, generator. It runs their house and actually runs a couple of their neighbors. They've run wires out to cover everybody else's refrigerators and turn on a light bulb. But they also were talking about using the car battery. And I guess more and more car batteries and truck batteries are now able to be a source for power in your house or power in your tools, or, if you're at a job site or stuff like that.
Right. Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's clever. I don't know how the wiring of that would work, but yeah, I guess people are working on that.
Yeah, because lead acid battery is still a very high concentrated power source. It's of course not good because of its weight.
Well,
they're awfully heavy.
Well, it makes me think, what is the car, it used to be if you ran out of gas, somebody could get you or fetch you a gallon of gas and you could move, get off to the road and get to the gas station.
Right.
What if an electric car is on the side of the road and runs out of power? I mean, does somebody have to drive up with a great big generator or battery or something?
Right. Exactly. Well, I don't know. Do you own a Tesla or any of the EV?
No. I'm thinking for a backup for that, you could put a gas generator like these whole house generators, strap it on the back of the car in the trunk, and keep it powered so you can keep running.
How many people in an electric car put a gas powered generator in the trunk just in case?
That's a generator. That's an idea.
That's an idea, right?
Well,
for a long range trip, you get to a town that doesn't necessarily have EV chargers in it or something like that, even though they're trying to build that infrastructure up. And I also heard there was maybe we'll talk about this later, there is a problem with reliability of those chargers.
Yeah, I heard that, yeah.
But anyway, that's the kind of question you have. I think the Chevy Volt was actually an electric car, not the Bolt, which is now fully electric, but that was GM's one that was like a hybrid. It had a gasoline motor in it. Yeah. And so, and the hybrids, that's kind of the way they operate. They've got the motor only turns on when, you're needing it, sort of. Yep. So the question is, I would think I think the car manufacturers have kind of a special reserve power, that if you're really, can only take you another 10 miles, and certainly Tesla with all its electronics warns you that you only have 10 miles to go or something like that. And we have that on cars. We have it on gasoline cars, a little warning
light, yeah, which I promptly ignore. I've been known not to look at that very often.
All right, yeah, just put a little black tape over it, Fred.
Yeah, it'd be easier. Well, I'm thinking of the Safari, the big Jeeps that would have gas cans all strapped all around it so they could keep fuel in and stuff. I'm thinking of a Tesla with a bunch of gas cans strapped all over it and an electric motor in the back, or a generator in the back.
Or a bunch of boxes of lithium-ion batteries that they could plug into.
Oh, man, that would be exciting, yeah.
It's something like that.
Well, anyway, we should probably wrap this up. We're rambling along.
Oh, okay.
The conditions to use redundancy continues to change. I think that was my overall message. And adding it after the fact prevents all kinds of other issues and problems and trade-offs. So if your product is evolving and changing, if your system is evolving and changing, its criticality changes, which can happen, then you need to really think through this redundancy thing. And it's part math to figure out that part of it, but it's also very much design and being very good at what you're setting up as a system. So if you got questions on this or any other topic that we'd like talking about, let us know. Or if you got a topic you're not sure if we'd like to talk about, let us know. Head over to accendoreliability.com/go/SOR. A couple of ways to get in touch with us. Kirk and I and the other hosts are available through LinkedIn and our About pages on Accendo. So it's bright and sunny here, Kirk. I don't think I'm going to need a backup system for anything, but you never know. You never know.
Yeah. No, it's it's something that we'll never really think about and adding a generator here. So it's those are the trade-offs of living, wherever you're living. You live in a very beautiful place, but the trade-off for you is that you may not have power now.
That's right. It's rough around the edges at times.
Yeah,
like we said.
That's California.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks, Kirk. I know we could dive into pretty random topics, and we always have a good time talking about it. There's no problem with that.
Let's do this again sometime, Fred.
Yeah, no, we should do it soon. Talk to you later, Kirk.
Okay, Fred. Take care.
Cheers. Thanks for listening to Speaking of Reliability. We invite you to join the conversation. If you have a question or a topic that you think we should discuss in a future show, please let us know. You can find a comment box below the episode show notes, or just leave a note as part of a review on iTunes.